Court today is giving a notice for the hearing of Atiku Abubakar's case against Bola Tinubu. And the president has withdrawn the appointment of the chairman of FAMA, the young Kashim Imam. Today we'll be taking a look at the president's different appointments and what has become of those appointments in terms of quality, and whether they are round pegs and round holes. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimaloye in Abuja. Tonight, just as always, we have so much on our menu, and we'll try as much as possible to do our best to do such a quality conversation on these items on our menu. So stick around with me and let's get started, shall we? First, I think we should serve you with your political roundup stories. All right, just in a moment, before I bring you all up to speed with what is happening across the nation, let's tell you that the Supreme Court has fixed the date for a hearing the petition of Atiku Abubakar, the People's Democratic Party's candidate in the 2023 presidential election against President Bola Tinubu's election. According to a notice that is obtained by Channels Television, the Apex Court had fixed Monday the 23rd for the hearing of the case. The Presidential Election Petition Court had given its verdict affirming the election of Bola Tinubu of the APC, and afterwards there were appeals that were filed by Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi against the position of the appellate court, which sat as the Presidential Election Petition Court in that matter. Before we get talking about the major conversations for tonight, let's bring you up to speed with some of your political roundup stories.
President Bola Tinubu has assured that the federal government is committed to eradicating poverty among Nigerians through consistent policies that will create wealth and lift Nigerians out of poverty. President Tinubu, who was represented by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, stated these in Ikotekpene, Akwa Ibom State, while declaring open a two-day retreat on fiscal policy and tax reform for members of the 10th Senate. He called on the National Assembly to support his administration to deliver on his promise to Nigerians.
President Bola Tinubu to put us on the road to rapid, inclusive economic growth that will create jobs and reduce poverty.
The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Nyesom Wike, has threatened to shut down illegal motor parks operating in Abuja due to incidents of one-chance robbery in the city. Mr. Wike made this statement during a media charge in his office in Abuja.
And so when you clamp down on them, you will see some kind of people that you don't want people to survive. We know you should survive, but not at the risk of committing crime.
Presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 election, Mr. Peter Obi has faulted the response of President Bola Tinubu over the alleged forged Chicago University certificate. Mr. Obi was in Kano, where he paid a condolence visit to the family of a former Minister of Interior, Mr. Bello Yusuf, in Kano. He says leaders must earn public trust and not outsource personal information, as country must be built on character and trust.
If you choose to serve the public, you always avail yourself to explain to the public when there's issue of dispute. And you must do so personally.
The People's Democratic Party in Ondo State has called on the State House Assembly to immediately commence an impeachment process against the governor, Rotimi Akeredolu. The opposition party, in a press statement signed by its publicity secretary, Mr. Kennedy Peretti, insists Akeredolu's continued absence is a constitutional violation, calling on the Assembly to perform its expected duty in a circumstance like this. And ahead of the governorship election in Bayelsa State, the former immediate past governor of the state and senator representing Bayelsa West, Seriaki Dixon, has declared support for Governor Doye Dewey, saying that his quest for re-election will be successful. Senator Dixon, who was speaking at campaign rally in Sagbama local government area of the state, where he called on the electorate to conduct themselves in peaceful manner during the election.
I want to call for peace, and all players should respect the peace of their communities, peace of their wards and local government areas, and generally the peace of our state.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. So let's get straight to it. We've told you about the Supreme Court, which has given a notice about the hearing of the case between Bola Tinubu and Atiku Abubakar. Atiku Abubakar has a case and filed his appeal to the Supreme Court against the verdict of the Presidential Election Petition Court, and the election of Bola Tinubu, and the Supreme Court is set to hear that matter. Also, we understand now that the President Bola Tinubu has directed the withdrawal of the nomination of engineer Imam Kashim Imam, who has been nominated earlier to serve as the chairman of the board of directors of the Federal Roads and Maintenance Agency, FEMA. The president's withdrawal of the young man directed is supposed to take immediate effect. President Bola Tinubu has approved the appointment also of 8 new chief executive officers for parastatals and agencies under the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation. They include Jibring Ndasi, the director, DG of the Voice of Nigeria, Lekon Fadolapo, the DG, Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria, ARCON, Ali Muhammad Ali, the CEO of News Agency of Nigeria, Dili Ezuba, who is the Executive Secretary and the CEO of Nigeria Press Council, Lanre Issa Onilu, who will be serving as the DG of the Nigerian National Orientation Agencies. These are some of the appointments that are being made by the president. Of course, it's almost on a daily basis now we hear one appointment or the other, but the big question is, are those round pegs in round holes? How would you, as a citizen, assess some of these appointments? But let's get talking. I have tonight an elder statesman, eminent in every sense of the word, a former member of the National Assembly, and is a scholar, Dr. Usman Bugaje. He joins us live here in our studio. Thank you so much, Dr. Bugaje, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much indeed. They say there is always going to be an end to all litigation. The Supreme Court is the final court in the land. Now, Atiku Abubakar has gone to court. He's gone to Chicago, now to court. What are your views about on the legal tussle that we have seen on our elections, especially the presidential election, and especially the kind of conversations on the issue of certificate, whether or not your identity and things like that have been raised. And those in the APC that also pointed at Atiku Abubakar to say, you add Sadiki in your certificate, you also have a case to answer. These are some of the conversation, and we've taken it upon ourselves that anyone who is coming from any office that is coming into our studio, we will ask them to let us know what their academic qualifications are. But what are your views about the conversation that has led to court in Nigeria today?
Well, let me say that in going to court, this is in keeping with democratic practice. Mm-hmm. Whenever there is an election and a party feels that they are not satisfied with the rulings of a court, they have an opportunity to go on appeal and to present their case at a higher court so that they can be able to get justice. So for me, I don't think it's a matter to discuss. Going to court is a normal process, as the Constitution and the laws of the land have allowed that, and it is in order. Now, the issue of certificates has a very important significance. I don't know how much we are ready to look at this issue, because a lot of the discussions I have listened to or I've read about tend to be very superficial. Let me say 3 things very quickly. 1, the fact that we are arguing about certificates speaks to the quality of the people we have, or lack of it, as it were, in politics. We should be able at this level to have people whose records are so very straight that you do not need to get engaged in this. There are bigger issues that should engage this country. I've tried always to make this point, that this country already has 20 million children out of formal school system. God knows the number of people that have finished school and they cannot find jobs. We have a country of 220 million people today, but in another just 7 years down the line, we're going to grow up to 300 million. In 2050, which is not too far away, we have young people. In 25 years or thereabouts, we expect this country to be well over 400 million in population, which will make it the third country after India and China. What I expect politicians to be discussing, how do you provide the infrastructure for this population? How do you provide food? How do you provide education, healthcare, jobs? Because that is what is going to make the country great. That's what's going to make the country stable. That's what's going to make the country peaceful. If you can't, you are going to go into the kind of conflict that we are beginning to see, or that we have seen for the last 1 decade or so. So the point is, it's very sad. It's a very sad commentary that our politicians are, or the kind of people that we have in politics that eventually, get into positions of power are people whose qualifications are doubted. Now that speaks a lot of volumes about the fact that of the quality of leadership we're going to get. The second point is that when it comes to, if you like, the political culture that we run has somehow accepted these things as norm. Because I would expect that the party itself should have done sufficient screening in its candidate before they even get to the point of being contesting for election.
Oh, one will also imagine that these names are submitted to INEC. Does INEC do a check?
Okay.
Does the party
I'm coming to INEC
in the first place?
I'm coming to INEC, but before they even go to INEC, they come through a political party. And a political party should have values. If they have values of integrity, then that name could not have come through.
Political parties screen their candidates. So you wonder what exactly did they do when they screened?
We do that. I was secretary of a political party, as you might remember. And we have to go through that for every election. And so it means that is the failure of the party. And then we come to INEC, which is even independent. Even if the party decides to be selfish, if that's the word to use, at least the INEC being an independent, I emphasize the independence there. They should be able to carry out a due diligence and confirm, check and recheck. And so you can see the failure of the institution at the party level, the failure of the institution at INEC level, and this speaks to our political culture. And I'm saddened that we have a political culture that literally allows this rubbish to come through. The third and important point.
Just remember, before you go to the third point. So if we have a political culture that is dented and is hogwash, so you're not surprised that we are getting the kind of leadership that we get, not only at the presidential level, but also across the state and the local government.
Yes. Now, the other point I want to make, we are in the 21st century. Countries are, it's 21st century is a very competitive century. And if we are going to survive and thrive as a nation, we have to compete. And the competitive age that you get, the most important is knowledge. Now, if you have a system that does not prioritize knowledge, does not prioritize integrity, how can you compete? So how can we survive as a nation? How can we thrive as a nation? Look at other countries that have made progress. In the last 30 years, or even in the last decade, if you look at the countries that have made progress, they are countries that have gotten these things right because they are basic, they are fundamental to any polity. Any polity that does not prioritize knowledge, does not have integrity, does not have institutions that are working and functioning and doing their jobs, is not going to simply survive. And we are already getting there. We are already at some kind of precipice. So because we are struggling. I mean, look at the economy, and look at what has happened to this lifting of subsidy. In principle, many of us will accept that this subsidy fraud should stop. But clearly, it has been stopped without any preparation for it. And see how people are suffering. People in this country, in fact, are not bothered about it. They're just trying to see how can they survive the next day. And from now to Christmas, we estimate that most people who are eating into their savings or selling some of their assets to survive would have finished. Or you may have an asset that nobody can even buy. And we are going to face a crisis of a dimension that we have not seen before. What are the political leaders? What are the politicians, in position of government? What are they preparing? When you talk to them, honestly, they have no clue. Those that I've spoken to have no clue. And they don't even see it as a problem. So we're in a very big soup. Oh, yes.
I mean, when we wonder, and the security expert that I've spoken to had said, look, if we're not careful, the manner in which the economic state of the country is going, if the shocks are not being handled properly by the leadership of the country and at the state level, crime rates will rise, and our nation...
It has already risen. It has already risen. I mean, if you follow I know not everything gets reported, but certainly the much that we're able to see around us. And look at even the insecurity has gone high. I mean, the rate at which campuses are being invaded and female students being kidnapped, within the last 1 month, how many times have we had? So definitely things are worsening. And I expect the political leaders to come together and start, but of course, like I said, I can understand why they can't do it, because look at the failure of the institutions. In fact, like I was in a seminar not just 2 days ago, and we're discussing some of these issues. And I made the point that the political parties are actually criminal cartels. Basically. Oh, yeah, because a lot of the people have one crime or the other. Look at the leadership of the National Assembly. How many people are being investigated? And they are sitting right on their seat. The investigation has stopped and nobody is saying anything. How can you run a system like this and expect to succeed? You can't.
I mean, how do we get out of this? Because it looks like a whole bunch of
we have a way to get out of this. We have a way to get out of this. The first step is to come back and set criteria for leadership. No society, takes people just like that. For every post, for every seat you're going to occupy, you must earn it. You must qualify for it. Yes, you can work for election, but you must have those credentials that qualify you for that particular office. So the choice that voters are going to make are choices between competent or between competent people. The options that you have are options that are, whichever option you take, at least you have some kind of minimum guarantee. But at the moment, really, there is no criterion for leadership. The criteria that we have in the Constitution is not a criteria, it's a criteria for eligibility. Now, when you come to suitability...
A minimum standard.
That's just eligibility.
Yeah.
It just makes you eligible.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make you suitable. And we have no criteria for suitability. And that's the problem.
And I guess that we...
Now, some of these things are not written in the Constitution, but there are norms and there are certain standards that societies keep, which apparently our one has crumbled. Not that we didn't have one.
I mean, our traditional institution at some point, although monarchical in nature, but they are also, like you said, criteria in which you get onto that seat if you don't belong, if you don't have
the monarchy. I know they have what they call, it's like an electoral college.
Yeah.
The people, the kingmakers, and they do have standards. So you find, for example, if a king dies, and then there are 10 or 20 of his children, they're all eligible, right? By virtue of their system, right? But they are not all suitable. Yeah. So how do you now take the one that is suitable? You come up with a criteria.
And you look at the United States, for example, they will tell you that some of the presidents in the past have finished from one Ivy League or the other. And you look at Singapore, for example, almost all the members of cabinet have had to go to Harvard School of Governance, and and you see the level, the effort being made to increase knowledge so that they can impact to the society.
And Shewun, this is precisely why they are making progress, right? Now, there are no two ways about it. You leave this system of merit, you run into the kind of ditch that we are in today. We are not able to solve any of our problems. Every Nigerian problem, that you see every day, it gets worse.
But those who have hope in Bola Tinubu, for example, let's speak to specifics now. Those who have hope in Bola Tinubu, who went to the ballot to vote for him, in your own view, the early stage policies and decisions that he has made, how disappointed or how hopeful are you in Bola Tinubu?
Well, as you know, I have worked with him. I was in the AC and the ACN. So I have the privilege of having to work with him. And I'm honestly disappointed because I expected. He's a person who I know he would always have a book around him reading. He would always, you would be able to engage him. But all that magic has evaporated. I don't see it.
You think he has been demystified
by the
federal and the national level task?
I don't know. We are still in the process. But certainly that magic, that idea of a person who can solve problems is not there. Because look at the bundle of problems that are there.
You thought that Tinubu's name is synonymous to fixing Nigeria's problems at the initial stage?
No, I didn't think that he was synonymous, but I knew that he had talents that you could apply to solve, problems. Certainly. I mean, but I don't find
in the last months?
I don't find them.
Well, look at the appointments that he has made. And there's been a few reversal, withdrawal. What do you make of those kind of situations?
Well, first, I think the appointment system seems to be in crisis. Because, I worked in the presidency for 4 years, and appointments were made, and we know the processes that we go through. You never get to that point. You have to do thorough due diligence. You have to weigh and you have to consult the stakeholders. So by the time it gets to the table of the president, with all the options you have given him, whoever the president chooses, you will find that he fits in and, he will be accepted. Because you would have done the consultations, you would have done the due diligence. But this kind of ad hoc system, it doesn't even look like the president knows when the appointments are being made. It's like he wakes up and then he suddenly discovers that such and such and
How
such.
embarrassing is
I don't
this?
know. It's terrible. We're doing this in front of the whole world.
The presidency has a proper government structure, isn't it?
We are doing all this.
It's a parastatal on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, we are doing this in front of the world. And what is the world going to think of us? We are tumbling and fumbling. We don't know our left from our right. We don't seem to know who is supposed to do what. There is no system there.
What do you think could be happening? Could this be politics or could it be bad administration going on in the presidency?
I would say it's sheer incompetence. They have gotten people who have no idea of the job they are supposed to be doing. And this is why they are, they are embarrassing the government, embarrassing the country, and because if they knew, the first thing is that if you have an appointment to make, you go through a certain processes. Fair enough, you have people who have worked for you politically and who you want to reward. For as long as they are qualified and they are able to do this job, that's fair for me. Of course, you have to also be careful because, one thing you would never want to do if you are in government is exclusion. The moment people realize that you are taking or you are only making preference of people who come from a particular section of the country, then you have created for yourself a huge problem. Because then you lose trust, from the people. Then you are perceived as a chauvinist, not as a national leader. And then nobody trusts what you say, and nobody can actually come along. But worst of it is that people who feel excluded are going to fight back.
Let me ask you, the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation coordinates some of these appointments. And the presidency is supposed to have a handshake when there is an approver. The SGF office and all other relevant offices are supposed to have an handshake to do the diligence. Security agencies are supposed to do that. The FEMA, the young man that was appointed as the chairman of the board of FEMA, that's a federal road maintenance agency, said to have finished his youth service last year. He was an assistant to Dave Umahi, the Minister of Works, a few months ago, a bright young man who finished from Brighton and all of the school in the UK, but only finished youth service, and was appointed a few days ago to head FEMA. Now his appointment has been withdrawn. There are a lot of people who have raised their fears about appointing such a young person because of his experience as a chair of a board. What do you think could have happened? Is it possible that the president doesn't know who he was appointing?
Let us be fair to the young man. This is a Nigerian, a young man, from what I hear, a bright young man. So really, he has no fault in this matter, in the sense that if he's being asked to do something, that's okay. But the system should have been able to know this kind of job. Who are those that, or what are the kind of qualifications that are required for this job, right? And it is this kind of criteria that will determine or guide those who are going to be, selected for that particular responsibility. So I can see clearly things have gone wrong. You were talking about the coordination and the synergy between the Office of the Secretary to Government, the Office of the Security, and all the rest of it. It looks like from the time of the last government, I remember a very senior, an MD of a big parastatal, was removed just like that on the radio. And I called him. I heard this. Is it true? He said he also heard it. So I called the Secretary of Government then. I said, Secretary, I've just heard this. For what I know is that you were the one who signed his letter of appointment. So did you, he said he also heard it on the news. He never wrote any letter to him, the Secretary to the Government at that time. So it looks to me that the current president has inherited the terrible system and he's not improving on it. And this is why everything seems to be going down the drain.
If you are the president and this kind of thing is happening, Dr. Bugajo, who would you hold responsible?
Let me tell you first, if I was the president, this thing will not even happen, Sheun. It will not even happen. If it should, anybody who is involved will be fired straight away.
But who should be your go-to man? Now, who should be your gatekeeper
this
in that sense?
As far as I know, if they not change the system, is the Secretary to the Government. But the Secretary to the Government may not even know. He may not even know. So, because I gave you an example of what happened. I called the Secretary of the Government then, and he said he has no idea. I even called the Chief of Staff at that time. And I said, Chief of Staff, he said, oh, yes, he heard about it. So you mean you were not part of it? He said, no, I was not part of it.
So is a concept of cabalism?
Well, there are people around the president. I mean, we saw it in the last regime, and it looks like it's a continuum, which is a very sad and tragic thing, that, this thing called a few people, and, without the knowledge of the officers that are responsible, will connive and collect money and do all manners of things and then start appointing people or giving them letters. There was somebody in the last government who got one appointment from one particular, he got one appointment letter and he got another letter sacking him. Of course, he dropped the one that sacked him and took the appointment. And then later on, the other person, it's all very messy. And this is the problem of incompetence. If you do not prioritize knowledge and integrity in your appointment, that is exactly what you're going to get.
This country
will continue to suffer because all institutions will decay, they will not do their jobs, and of course, our image, even within the country,
If you were the president, and I ask again, this kind of flip-flop, who should be losing their job today?
Well, whoever is involved, I don't know.
The question is, if I'm I'm working closely with you,
anybody
if I'm your right-hand man,
anybody
because before the president makes an approval, there should be someone who checks before the president gets
Precisely,
the letter.
that's what I told you.
So the question is, in fact, who should be the president right-hand man?
The checks are at about 3 levels. When I was in the presidency, I mean, usually the special advisors, this is part of their job. Now, when they do that, then it goes through the system. That is, the security will do their checks, the secretary to the government will do his check, and they depend upon who you are appointing. Sometimes the head of service also do his check, if he has any record of the head of service. If he has been like through the service and he's been given a political appointment. So all those that are involved must do their check, and then they come back. And you now consult the political stakeholders, either people from the party, from that particular zone, or from that particular state. You have to clear with them, because maybe he has some issues, with them. You wouldn't want until after the appointment that they do a delegation, they come and complain. Then it means that you are going to be entertaining complaints every now and then.
Dr. Bukaje, because you will see as though there's a knee-jerk approach in all of these, instances, and it happened too many times. You see the appointment of the EFCC chairman. Those who have criticized to say, look, this man does not meet the basic fundamental requirement of the law, the Establishment Act, of the cognate experience that is needed for him to have been either a police officer or to have been trained as an investigator. In fact, on the inside in the EFCC, there are those who are aggrieved to say he doesn't have that experience. Yes, as an administrator, as a lawyer, 22 years of experience. That came. So when he was appointed, there was a subsisting man from the same region of the country heading the ICPC. It took a Femi Falana who criticized it on China's television. The presidency afterward had to remove. And there has been cases over and over again like that people would have to point out. Ministers who appeared for screening, they've been asked to turn them back because the presidency at the last minute had withdrawn their nominations. This kind of situation, is the president able to salvage this situation quickly?
I don't know. I can't answer that question. He would be the one to answer. But I can tell you one thing. Clearly, what we have seen are evidence of the fact that the president is not in charge. Someone else is in charge. Now, it's for him to figure out if he wants to really be in charge. How can a name get to the point of getting to the National Assembly for clearance? That's the final stage. And then you don't even know. Anybody who would have been involved with this should leave.
And NDDC, for example, another name was presented, another name was admitted.
And when you spoke
ministers
about
when you spoke about
the EFCC, one of the things that I find very interesting, which is very popular now, is that look at the last EFCC chairman. He's in detention, and he may well be there properly. I don't know. I don't have the details, but all the people who he was investigating are the ones who are taking the, big seats at the moment. Isn't that itself a tragedy? Are we not embarrassed as a nation that such a thing is happening? This government doesn't seem to have any sense of shame, I'm afraid to say so. You will feel ashamed to get certain things done. And then clearly there is an element of contempt for citizens. You just do things the way you want, how you want, irrespective of the rules and regulations are there. Are you not running a democracy? Have you not sworn to uphold the Constitution? Isn't the Constitution, there to guide, all of us? Is there anybody who is above the Constitution? So this reckless kind of behavior suggests that, there is contempt. They don't see anything. And this is partly, I think, because of the way we practice our politics. It's cash and carry. People pay. And because they pay, they have a sense of entitlement, and that's it. So if we really want to have a country, we have to get out of this mess.
Such scenarios, but one thing is paramount here. We want a better Nigeria. If things are going wrong, We have a hope that it can get better. Anybody who is saddled with the responsibility to get things done should get their acts together. But let's take a breather, Dr. Usman Bugaje.
Thank you.
When we return, more conversation about the state of the nation, the early days of President Bola Tinubu, how is it performing? Some of the policies, how are they affecting you and your livelihood as a citizen of Nigeria? Our conversation with the elder statesman, Dr. Usman Bugaje, a scholar, a former member of the National Assembly, will continue right after now. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Dr. Usman Bugaje has been our guest tonight on the program. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
My pleasure.
I'd like to take you back to the contestation for the office of the president, which is gone to court now, and I'd like you to give us a sense of your own view of the outcome of that election, however intense it looked. It was one thing that we go into our history books as one election that caught some people as a surprise, one election that defiled some odds, and for a lot of people, historical in several sense. And for you, the outcome of that election and the contestation that we have seen afterwards, how much of impact do you think the consequences that it has had on our polity?
Shaun, this is a big issue, and this is an issue which we can discuss for over an hour. For me, it is the very fundamentals of the election. If you look at the delegates, the primaries, money was being exchanged freely and openly. We were all hoping that the EFCC, the ICPC, the SSS would be in those particular embedded within to arrest people who were using money. They didn't. We didn't see them. If they were there, I don't know what stopped them from taking. And that for me was the beginning of the problem. Because if the whole edifice of election, because primary election is a major if you like, it's a major component of the general election. Mm-hmm. So if it becomes cash and carry at that level, then you know the kind of people you're going to end up with. And look at the amount of money that was now, and I'm not talking about just the APC, I'm talking about here across board, right? I mean, almost all the parties. There must be one or two where things are maybe, but for the majority of the parties that I know, and I participated, mm-hmm. and I know that money was used. Now, for me, honestly, that is something that is so fundamentally wrong with our elections and which will continue to haunt our political system if we do not address it. And I know people find this uncomfortable and they don't even want to discuss it, but that's the beginning of the problem. And if we cannot go back to those roots and address them, now you come to the general election itself. I mean, we have participated. My own election, I went to my own ward, the Bugaje ward in Katsina State, and I saw what I saw. And I saw people brazenly sharing spaghetti, clothes, soaps, and so many other things. And there were people who were maybe not as open as they were sharing these things openly, and the police were there. Of course, there was only one single policeman. And I was actually shocked, and I asked him, I said, okay, so you are alone, what can you do? So really, our elections are really in shambles. And they cannot but produce shambles because garbage in, garbage out. And therefore, all the things that we are complaining about, that our economy is not picking up, is going down the drain, insecurity is not improving, it is worsening. When you talk about jobs, even those with jobs now, because of the economy, they cannot even feed themselves, they cannot feed their family, they cannot go to hospital, they cannot pay school fees. Even those who are working in bank, because of the escalation of an inflation. So everything about us is not working. Everybody who lives in this country knows, even those who are in government, knows that Nigeria is not working. And yet they are sitting there comfortably, quite happy with themselves, sharing the national resources and not caring about what some of us are saying. I'm sure somebody is watching and dismissing as maybe, oh, look at these people saying this kind of thing. But these are the issues that politicians or the whole country should be addressing. If we don't fix this, it's the country that's going to crumble, Sean. It's not going to stay. There is no sustainability in the mess that we are in now.
You look at an Atiku Abubakar, for example, and a Bola Tinubu in their own right, heavyweights. And there comes a Peter Obi, who came in the third leg as, not someone who is too far away from the system, as a lot of people will think, but it became a phenomenon in that election. What do you think of a Peter Obi that culminated in a movement called the Obedient Movement? What do you make of that?
For me, Peter represents the quest for change. People were tired of APC, were tired of PDP, and they were looking for change, especially the young people. So it could have been Peter, it could have been anybody who had the courage to chart a different course.
So it wasn't about Peter Obi?
It's not so much about Peter, like the fact that people are, completely disenchanted with the two big parties that have literally destroyed this country. Because PDP cannot extricate itself from blame. I mean, it has ruled for this number of 16 years. And therefore, they are all part of those political parties that have actually destroyed this country. So therefore, young people who are looking for change saw in Peter some hope that things can be done differently. And he was speaking to them in the language that they can connect. He was talking about their future. He was talking about jobs. He was talking about things. So whatever else is there, I think it is the fact that people are looking for alternatives. And I can tell you, when you discuss with people, they are disgusted with the politics completely. They're looking for something else. Yeah, because it's not delivering. Shown 25 years, poverty has more than tripled. Insecurity has escalated to levels that are inconceivable. Jobs are not there. Education has crumbled. Everything that, people cannot even survive. And the politicians are getting fat and buying new jeeps and building new houses. For goodness sake. Are we fools?
The members of the House
of this country have got every reason to.
The House of Reps members are angry about the agitation against the move to purchase vehicles for their jobs, and there are those who will say it's legitimate for them to have tools of trade, or tools for them to do their jobs. But there are those who will say, well, you might need the tools for their job.
I spent 4 years in the National Assembly. I had one vehicle. Well, and I did my job.
It seems to be one vehicle per each person. But the argument for some people is the cost of these vehicles. Yeah, the National Assembly, at some quarters, we are hearing that it's actually not 130 million. It's 119 million. Some people will say it is 90 million. Nigerians are saying, even if it's 50 million.
Even if it is 30 million, why do we have to do that?
Do they have to buy vehicles?
Look at the suffering of the ordinary people who they ostensibly said, elected them. And isn't that the priority? I had a commissioner, and this came in a BBC interview, who went around to do a check on the education. What he found was that there were 500 schools, primary schools, that he has gone around physically to see, where there's only one teacher. Only one teacher. Go to the hospitals. I mean, these people have no conscience.
If it were to be 100 million per vehicle, Nigeria would have spent 36 billion.
Our economy cannot afford this at the point in time.
To purchase the vehicle.
How much was ASU requesting? I mean, these people have no sensitivity at all. They don't take the voters for nothing because they paid, or they think they paid everybody.
There are those even in the Labour Party who are now criticizing members who represented, and I've seen a few of the obedient movement leaders who have said, look, those of you that are of the Labour Party, we thought you were going to make a change and oppose these kind of measures and these kind of policies.
They have dissolved and followed, the suit. But I have an issue with the Labour Party itself. I mean, not the Labour Party, the Labour movement. I mean, maybe another day, but certainly they are not, they are not, remember, yes, Labour is a very important civil society, and they should be pushing for policies and changes. But in these last few years, I'm really not, last few weeks, I'm really not impressed. I mean, they ought to be speaking in terms of what exactly is wrong, not just for the purpose of just simply raising salaries. In fact, economically, even if you raise salaries, you just create inflation. There are fundamental things that they should be actually fighting for.
So is it more of the lawmakers buying vehicles or patronizing locally made vehicles or buying vehicles at all? Don't they need to buy vehicles to do their jobs?
I think the issue is not vehicles. The issue is we are running a system that is based on rent seeking. People are not prepared to make the sacrifices that leadership is known for. Anybody who is in politics today or is holding position who does not prioritize the problems of his own constituency, I don't think he deserves to be in that seat. I don't think he deserves to represent them.
I mean, you are in Abuja today, and I'm not sure if you drive around so much, but I've seen quite a lot, and it's alarming. Probably the second time I'll be mentioning this in a week. And I think perhaps the sensitivity that you have mentioned about those who govern, and I'm not sure these are even some of the people in the IS office. I see sometimes 10 vehicles in a convoy, and it's become a practice. And if you live around areas where government officials live, you hear sirens almost every time. It's just in our backyard here. You hear the sirens virtually every moment. Should every official of government blow siren around, blow the siren around time? How much of a vehicle, how much vehicle could they have in their convoy? Cost of governance. What do we need to do about this political culture?
These people seem to be in entirely a different world. You can't even engage them. What we're talking about here hardly makes any sense to them. Because what brought them into politics essentially is to make money and to acquire plots of land and build and do all the things that, basically this is the motivation. I concede that there must be one or two that are different, but they are immaterial, they are inconsequential in a system where the political culture is basically about what can I get out of the system, not what can I contribute to the system.
Where do we go from here, Dr. Bugaja? We must have a solution. There must be a solution.
One, I have said it either here or some other places. One, we first need to craft an elite consensus in this country. We must find a way of building a consensus as to where do we want our country to be in the next.
Who will convene this kind of elite consensus arrangement?
The civil society. The civil society.
What will it entail?
It will entail getting organized labor, getting the academic, saying, wait a minute, we are the elite by virtue of the education that we have acquired. And we are supposed to be able to guide or navigate out of the current problems that we have, because there are experts amongst us. Therefore, we should say, okay, where do we want this country to be? We want this country to be in this position? Okay, let's organize ourselves instead of consistently agonizing. Let us organize ourselves to confront those in power and to make sure that there are political parties. If we can't get anything done now, in the next election, we should organize ourselves to have the kind of people that we think should be there.
All right.
And this is not going to be impossible. It's just that sometimes people don't have the courage to even start. But I mean, there could be other alternatives, but this is the most democratic alternative that I can think of.
So There are two short questions I'd like you to tackle, and I'm being told I just have about 60 seconds to close. And I imagine that we've been in these roller coaster. I mean, since the Fourth Republic, it looks to me Obasanjo tried to establish something, and and there we're stumbling. Economy issue, security issue, and we've not really had a clear vision as a people. I mean, there was a time that the whole world knew Nigeria as an agrarian country, country that is rich in agricultural resources. Then we became so lazy, and we found oil. And as soon as we found oil, our laziness became so glaring. And I'm imagining those of your generation and my own generation, perhaps there is a need for a national focus, a vision of what we want Nigeria to look like, an economic agenda for our nation for the next 20 or 30 years, so that whoever and wherever political party you belong to, you have to key into it. Don't you think so?
This is exactly what has made China where it is. Today we had a conference with the Chinese, and the head who came from China made exactly the same statement. If you listen to Lin Kuan Yew, this is exactly what he's saying. Even if you come to Africa, Kagame, that's exactly what he's saying. And that makes the important point that what matters is always leadership. And our leadership recruitment mechanism is faulty. It is only bringing out the wrong kind of people who have no idea of where to take this country.
And that's why my generation will blame your generation, because you have not led us very well, in the sense that we've looked up to your generation, and some of our generation are out of the equation, out of oblivion. Most of those who are schooled with are no longer even invited in this country. They've even questioned why I'm still in this country. But the question is that, where do we start from?
Sharon, you can go on blaming everybody that you meet on the way. That doesn't solve your problem. I don't blame. I look for solutions.
That's what we are doing.
That's what we should be doing.
That's why some of us are staying here to make sure that we fix this country.
Yeah, we should, but we need the civil society to lead. I'm doing something on it. Right. I'm trying to convene a civil society meeting where we achieve. I had tried it earlier, but some people just fizzled out. But right. I'm not giving up. I'm going to continue.
Dr. Bugoje, I have 20 seconds, and it's going to be a question that I need you to direct to the Mr. President, Bola Tinubu. If he's watching right now, if you look at the camera, this country is in a dire situation. Those who would describe the fact that we are at a precipice. If you were to tell him anything in 20 seconds, what would that be?
He will have to change all his team. I don't see him with a team around him. I know these are people he has come a long way, 30, 40 years. He's very comfortable with them. But, Mr. President, they are not helping you. They are not delivering. They are actually getting this country to crash. Therefore, you have to change your team, change your focus, get a direction, and be ready to really pull us through.
Dr. Usman Bugoje is an elder statesman. Thank you so much. Our scholar and a former member of the National Assembly. Thank you so much indeed for your time. I do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We love this country. I love this country. I breathe this country. I want to see this country prosper. I don't know about you. We need to continue to talk about this country and the solutions that we have. If you are a leader or a follower, wherever you may be, in fact, you may be out of the country, you may have Japa. For those of us who are here, we believe in a Nigeria that can work. That's how we leave it tonight, everyone. And thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow again at 7 p.m. I'm sure Akimale. God bless Nigeria.